Hello folks, this is Scott with Dallas Paint Correction and Auto Detailing here in Dallas, Texas. I want to have a conversation about paint preps, when they're appropriate to use and when they might be potentially dangerous. What is a paint prep, a body solvent, however you want to refer to it? A paint prep or a body solvent has the ability to remove grease, grime, traffic film, residues left over from polishes, compounds. Basically what it does is guarantee you that your paint is absolutely clean and what I call virgin. There's nothing on the paint. We typically would recommend using a paint prep before applying a wax and sealant so the wax and sealant can truly bond to the paint and there's no residue left over from your soap, maybe your clay lube, whatever you've used before those steps before applying a wax and sealant. What I want to talk about and what's become very popular with body solvents or paint preps, let's say I was doing a two-step correction here. Usually on the first step, not usually, but typically always, right? On the first step of a two-step correction, I'm going to use a very aggressive pad and I'm going to use an aggressive compound, right? I'm going to go in here and cut this paint. I'm going to remove the defects. I'm then going to wipe up the compound residue and check my work. That's cool, that's great, right? I want to help you understand something why putting a body solvent on the panel immediately after cutting paint may be potentially dangerous. Let me put this in layman's terms. Let's say at this moment I have no open wounds, I have no abrasions, no cuts on my hand. If I poured rubbing alcohol on my hand, what would happen? Really nothing, it's just going to get wet, right? I wipe it off. If I had my hand and I took 3000 grit sandpaper and lightly abraded it and then poured rubbing alcohol on it, what's going to happen? Holy crap, that's going to hurt. We have to understand when we're cutting paint, it is getting incredibly hot, it's also expanding, and it's what we call stressed at the moment. If you introduce a body solvent immediately after cutting it under those circumstances of it being hot, expanded, and stressed, that's not the best time to use a body solvent because the clear coat is much more absorbent at that moment. I hope that kind of makes sense. The other thing you have to realize is when paint is hot, expanded, and stressed, it actually is easier to mar. So guys are cutting the paint, they don't really trust that their compound has no fillers. They'll remove the residue from the compound, go in with their paint prep, and wipe the surface off. Again, they're introducing a solvent when the paint is under stress. Sometimes you might be chasing your own tail because the clear coat is very easy to mar in that moment, and all of a sudden you've kind of scratched or marred the paint. You go, oh my God, I gotta hit it again with my compound. Very important to understand when to use body solvents and when they're appropriate and when they can be potentially dangerous. I just wanted to highlight that to you guys. Body solvents, paint preps are incredibly effective. We have to be careful when we're using them. If you're using a compound, you can verify with the company if they're using any fillers. You're far better off cutting the paint, wiping off the residue, checking your results. If it looks good, move on. If you want to use a body solvent on this panel, why don't you go all the way around the car? Give the paint a chance to cool down, de-stress, and contract back to its original form or shape, if you will, before using the body solvent to double check your work. Using a body solvent immediately after cutting paint is problematic. The clear coat really shouldn't be exposed to a solvent at that moment, and also the paint is easy to mar. You're far better off trusting the manufacturer of your compound. I love you all. I kind of hope that makes sense, but if you're just simply washing your car, claying your car, you haven't stressed the paint out from cutting it with the compound, you're free to go to use a body solvent if you want to make sure it's absolutely clean before laying a wax and sealant. But using it immediately after cutting this panel is potentially dangerous for the reasons I spoke about. Trust your compound. Verify with the companies that you're buying the compound from. Do you use fillers? You know, sometimes you could be trying to make sure there's absolutely no fillers in it, but you might be marring the paint and indirectly, you know, scratching the paint and just making it worse for yourself. Far better off to wait for it to cool down, contract, and not be so stressed out before using a body solvent or a paint prep. I love you all. I hope that makes sense. Talk to you guys soon.